You are listening to Fierce Feminine Leadership, episode number 203.
Welcome to Fierce Feminine Leadership, the success podcast for women in business. Each week, we feature interviews and advice to help you step into your power and lead your way. Now here's your host, women's leadership expert, Eleanor Beaton.
Hello there, Fierce Ones. Eleanor Beaton here, and welcome back to another episode of Fierce Feminine Leadership, the success podcast for ambitious women in business. And today we are speaking to Lolly Daskal. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite interviews on the show. Lolly is brilliant, present, really, really interesting. I can't wait to share the interview with you. But before we get there, I want to let you know that the Leadership Lab, this is our signature flagship course. It's an 8-week course designed to help women leaders step into their power and position themselves as the preeminent experts they are in their space. So if you are really looking to step into your power as a leader this year, you want to learn tactics to help you elevate your visibility, build your confidence as a leader, own your signature leadership presence, this program is for you. You can get more details about it at leadershiplabforwomen.com. We've had graduates from all over the world take part, from the Middle East, from Europe, from across North America. I've got to say, it really is a unique program, bringing together into an intimate learning environment women from all over the world. And the best part, of course, is that you can do it from your own office. So if you want to learn more about how to really elevate your leadership skills this year, head on over to leadershiplabforwomen.com and you can read some case studies from graduates and learn more about what's covered in the program. So let's talk about Lolly Daskal. I first learned of her a couple of years ago, just sort of through the leadership ether. She's one of the most sought after executive leadership coaches in the world. Her extensive cross-cultural expertise spans 14 countries, 6 languages, and hundreds of companies. As founder and CEO of Lead From Within, her proprietary leadership program is engineered to be a catalyst for leaders who want to enhance performance and make a meaningful difference in their companies, their lives, and the world. Based on a mix of modern philosophy, science, and nearly 30 years coaching top executives, Lolly's perspective on leadership continues to break new ground and produce exceptional results. And if you're listening to this thinking, well, I'm not a top executive, I don't lead a huge company, that's what I love so much about this interview. She really breaks leadership down into something that any of us can do. It's really brilliant. For many awards and accolades, Lolly was designated a top 50 leadership and management expert by Inc.com, 100 great leadership speakers for your next event by Inc. magazine, and the Huffington Post honored Lolly with the title of the most inspiring woman in the world, right? So really excited for this interview. Big inspiration here and lots of practical strategies on how you can explore your own leadership gap and step into your power and lead from within. Ladies, here's Lolly Daskal. Come on! Lolly Daskal, welcome to Fierce Feminine Leadership.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure and a real privilege.
So you have been working in the field of leadership development for 36 years. Tell us, where did your fascination with great leadership begin?
What a great question. It's not only one moment in time when we say great leadership was developed. I think I can only speak for myself. For myself, it was that I was going through some challenges in my life and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know where to find answers. And when we're at a point in our lives where when we're asking questions and we're looking for answers, sometimes it's not on the outside. Sometimes it's not the person. Sometimes it's not the situation. Sometimes it's not even the challenge. What I found was if I was going to survive anything in my life, I would have to come from within. And that's how I actually started my company. It's called Lead From Within. I knew that if I was going to not only survive but thrive, I would have to equip myself to become the best version of myself. So no matter what challenge, no matter what difficulty or struggle, it would come from within. And that is where you would call great leadership began. But that's where I felt that my life began. That's where I felt that I could do whatever I was challenged and anything that would come my way.
You have achieved enormous things in the world of leadership development. I would love for you to take us back, to your upbringing. When you look back on your early days, your childhood, do you see seeds of Lolly Daskal, the great thought leader in the field of leadership development? When you look back, what do you see that give clues to what would ultimately happen?
There are no clues. There was insecurity, there was self-doubt, there was struggle. There was really dark days. And I'm not talking about, horrific things happening. I'm just talking about every day to day where you feel you don't have the answers. In my childhood, I didn't have those kind of mentors. I didn't have those kind of teachers that would help me along the way. And I am not anything that I was growing up. The pivot for me is that the moment that I started asking questions and I wasn't able to get the answers that I needed, and I knew that I would have to go find them, was the moment my life started. Because growing up, most of the time, I was a kind of person that said, why does this happen? Why does that work that way? Why are people like this? And the answers were always because this is the way it has to be. That doesn't feed a very curious soul. That doesn't feed a soul that wants to know answers. And so I schooled myself. I started to read feverishly. I still read a book a day because I still have that curious mind. And I started to take myself to places around the world that I could find answers to my questions. So who I was as a child, who I was in my teenagers, who I was even as a young adult is not anything who I am today. I had to groom it, build it, nourish it, and create it.
So you talked about, a part of nourishing is reading a book a day, which makes so much sense when you think about the different influences that you have previously discussed in terms of people who've shaped you, Viktor Frankl, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell. What are those things, when it comes to creating Lolly Daskal, really taking a look and making that transition from who you were, the person with questions, the person who didn't understand things, who had insecurities, into a place of greater enlightenment and evolution. What were the things that you did to prepare yourself, to teach yourself, to train yourself?
So one of the things I'm known for, anybody that knows me, is discipline. I am a very disciplined person because once I am disciplined, that's where I find my freedom. So the fact is that I do have rituals that I live by. There are aspects to my life, so the thing about reading a book a day is every single morning, no matter where I am, and I travel all the time, I read a book in the morning before my day starts because that's what feeds my mind. So I'm having a conversation with someone, I could bring something new that I didn't know yesterday. That's a discipline that gives me freedom of knowledge and wisdom and takes me to the next level. The fact that I've incorporated gratitude as a discipline gives me the freedom to say, wow, I have so much more than I ever thought I could have. These little nuances of discipline make me who I am, distinguishes who I am, is able to look at a situation when it's complicated or challenging and say, this too shall pass. These little disciplines of what I live by, you can call them principles or disciplines, have really shaped me into who I am today, and actually is going to take me where I can be tomorrow and even 10 years from now. I have very high aspirations. I haven't arrived yet. I still have a lot to do. There's a lot of things I want to accomplish. I truly want to make a significant, difference in the world.
I both love and hate that you said discipline because on the one hand, discipline is available to everybody. And on the other hand, discipline is discipline, so can you take us through what a typical day looks like for you? You mentioned that you read a book, every morning, which is astounding, really. Take us through a day and what that discipline looks like for you, over the course of a working day.
Right. So the word discipline has gotten a bad rap because it means I live by rules. But for me, a discipline is a mantra. is a practice. In Buddhism, that's what they talk. It's a practice. It's not something that is supposed to close you up and close you in. But as I said earlier, it's supposed to give you freedom. So my day starts every morning at 4:00. And between the hours of 4:30 to 6:30, I read the book. I don't answer my emails. I don't look at my phone. I don't do anything else but, take out a book off a shelf. If I'm in a hotel, I open up my little reader and I read a book from cover to cover. I then contemplate on something that I've read, either a thought or a story that has really touched me, something that I want to make part of who I am. And I usually use it in the day that I'm coaching or creating a workshop or even giving a keynote. I just gave a keynote the other day and I said, well, I read this morning and I brought it into the keynote. This is something I didn't know the day before. So after, you see, most people work out in a gym. I don't go to a gym ever. I work out my mind every single day. And I'm not saying don't work out, but I'm a big walker. So if I have an appointment somewhere, I will walk there instead of getting into a cab or getting on a train or even driving. So there is a way that I work out my body, but my most important thing is working out my mind every single morning. And then my day starts with gratitude. I think about what is it that I have in my life that is really wonderful. And I sit and list off some things. I'm grateful for 3 wonderful grown-up children. I'm grateful for this opportunity that I have today. Whatever it is, it puts me in a mindset of openness, gratitude, and optimism and positivity. And then I go about my day, no matter what it is it coaching clients? Is it getting on a plane and giving a keynote? Is it giving a workshop? And I do whatever I have to do during the day. And at night, I have this discipline of where, again, I give gratitude for what happened that day and I look forward to the next day. And so it might seem boring to most, but in that day, I have a lot of freedom to excel like I didn't excel the day before. I'm always taking myself to the next level.
And I do love your definition of discipline as a mantra and something that ultimately gives great freedom. Have you always been disciplined, or was this something that you arrived on later?
It's a great, great question. It has evolved over the years. Reading has always been something that I've done. I was a single mom for a very long time. So the word discipline and single mom and bread earner, it doesn't fit in the same sentence. Right? It's like, what? Discipline? But one of the things that is part of a discipline is being present. So if I was traveling and being there for my clients. If I was with my children, I was with my children. So the discipline was presence. Wherever you are, be the best that you can be. So don't pick up your cell phone. Don't look over your shoulder who you're speaking to. Just be present with that person, because it's not about quantity. I found that it's about quality. The quality that you give in your presence will be more memorable than if you spend the whole day with someone. So everything in my life has evolved into what it is. It didn't start out this way, but everything grew upon each other. It's almost like stepping stones in order to create who I am today.
Again, getting back to the notion of reading and books and feeding the mind, what would be some of the books that have shaped you or inspired your thinking or been most influential?
So you mentioned my 3 mentors, Viktor Frankl, Joseph Campbell, and Carl Gustav Jung. If you read any one of these books and you only read their books, you will be a different person for the rest of your life, and you'll evolve every single day. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is a book I read on every single birthday for the past 27 years. I've been rereading that book because this is what I have found to be true. Who I was last year on my birthday is not who I am today. And every time you reread a book, you reread it from who you are today, and it's something new about yourself. And it always brings a new enlightenment. It always brings something new to who I am. It takes me deeper every single year. So again, that's a discipline that I do. I sound very boring with all these disciplines, but it's giving me a great sense of groundedness in my life and a great sense of, I feel expansive. It sounds the opposite of what it should sound like, but it's given me a lot of freedom and expansiveness in my life to grow and expand and develop all the time.
Well, and it's interesting, this idea of, I'm not the same this birthday as I was last birthday, and this continuous drive to learn, to discover. How do you balance, or how does a person balance that curiosity, that desire to learn, to improve, to enhance, without, with the notion that we're not broken to begin with? Because I find this interesting. I was speaking to somebody recently who said, I feel as though I want to read self-help books and books that make me feel better. And on the other hand, I just kind of want to be okay as I am. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. Don't read a self-help book. I don't talk about self-help books. The biggest thing that I think is important is read biographies. Read about people's lives, read about their struggles, read about when they showed up in principles, show how they had character. Read people that you want to become, that inspire you. Don't read a self-help book. It's interesting. My daughter was reading a book the other day, and I said, I'm going to pick that up. And so I picked it up, and I finished it 20 minutes later. Why? Because every single thing was from a self-help book that I read in the early 1970s. It was like a projectile vomit of every single self-help book. It's on the New York Times bestseller right now. And I was like, I can't believe this has become, it's almost regurgitation of the same principles over and over again, but there's no meaning to it. Read a biography, read mythology, read history. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about self-help books.
Yeah, listen, I love that. I love what you're saying here. It was interesting. I remember some years ago, I was working as a business journalist at the time, and I sat down for an interview with a gentleman who is a tech magnate. Essentially, he owns one of the biggest wireless companies in Canada, and also happened to own a number of other large companies. Very, very successful, both entrepreneur and manager. So he was able to really bring the two together. So walking into the cell phone magnate's office, there's not a single piece of technology in sight. Over a 3-hour interview, he doesn't pull out his BlackBerry once. And what he told me, so at the end, he asked me what I was reading. And then he told me that he almost read exclusively biographies. And then I looked at the shelves in his office. They were lined with, biographies of the founding fathers, of, just incredible leaders. But he also, recommended to me one of my favorite biographies, which is Personal History by Katharine Graham, the former publisher of the Washington Post. Amazing biography. What's your favorite biography? What would you recommend for our listeners?
I hate this word. Yeah, I hate this word, favorite. I just want to say something. If anybody wants to read Poetry in Motion, read The Profiles of Courage by John F. Kennedy. You will underline every single sentence in that book. You will think it's your Bible. If you ever give a speech, if you ever want to encourage anyone, every single sentence in that book is powerful, so powerful. And you wonder, where do the great leaders go? So Profiles of Courage, but Einstein, D.H. Lawrence, Warren Buffett, Napoleon, Picasso, Bernard Muhammad, Thomas Mann. If you notice, they're authors, there are businessmen, there are artists. Oh, read poetry. Pick up a poetry book. It'll teach you so much about yourself you had no clue, because it'll tap into something you can't express. I don't read a self-help book. And so pick up. The funny thing is, I told my daughters before the summer, this is going to be a biography summer. And so I started with George Washington, and I've been going through every single president. And John Adams' biography made me cry for a week. I couldn't stop crying about John Adams and what happened with him and Jackson, how they both died on the same day, hours between each other. And they were the founding fathers of our Constitution. And their last words were, "Is he still alive?" They were thinking about each other, and they were separated, through states and everything. But just the fact that they died on the same day and hours between each other was so moving and so profound to me. These are movies. You make movies out of these things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Inspiring communication is the hallmark of the world's greatest women leaders. When you know how to elegantly and persuasively share your message in a way that people will hear and act upon, nothing can stop you. Eleanor Beaton here, and I want to warmly welcome you to a free mini course that we're going to be hosting called How to Find Your $1 Million Message. In this free mini course, you will learn the exact formula that made Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In such a blockbuster bestseller, and how you can find your $1 million message. I'm going to teach you how you can get booked as a paid keynote speaker, even if you don't have an agent or best-selling book yet. And finally, I will share some insider secrets about how to quickly build a global brand and set yourself apart as a woman of influence through speaking. Whether you are looking to grow your business or step into your next level of leadership inside the corporate world, this training is going to give you what you need to help you elegantly and persuasively share your $1 million message with the world. To sign up to get access to this free mini course, all you need to do is go to eleanorbeaton.com/message. That's eleanorbeaton.com/message. I'll see you at the training, and I can't wait. You know, this idea of books opening the gateway to the possibility of an idea, you know, it puts you in a different space. So it makes so much sense, you know, to start your day with a few hours of reading. You know, it's not a chapter, it's a few hours. I love that. Actually. I might have to start that, Lolly.
Yeah. Even if you don't have time to read and you go to the New York Times, there's a book section called Buy the Book. Buy the Book will tell you about all the famous authors that are now living, and they ask them 10 questions every week. See what they're reading. See what they have to say about, you know, writing and books. Even that will change you who you are as a person. So you don't have to make it a book a day. Read something by someone who's having an impact on society.
Speaking of books, let's talk for a moment about the leadership book, or the Leadership Gap, which is just came out a couple of months ago, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller, I believe, has been, you know, marvelously reviewed all over the place. I wanted to start out, before we get into the leadership gap, I'm curious to know, how do you define a great leader?
Thank you for asking that, because most people think leadership is about title and position. And my company's name, Lead From Within, will give you an example of what I think great leadership is, or what leadership is. I believe any single person that is impacting another, is playing a part in someone's life, is making a difference in their life, is leaving them better than they were when they met them, is a leader. And I believe that every single person, regardless of their position and title, is a leader. We all have potential to do that. So if you can find that essence and lead from within, you could be a great leader.
What is it that can make this so challenging for people to execute when it comes to, you know, when the concept collides with reality? So what do you think it is that makes it challenging for people when they're leading, say, teams of people or more complex projects? Where do things start to fall apart?
In the leadership gap. That's why I wrote the book, The Leadership Gap. It's called What Gets Between You and Your Greatness. Most people want to strive for greatness, but they don't understand what keeps them stuck. They don't understand what holds them back, and they don't understand why they're not taking themselves to the next level. We, you know, individuals are hired for their talents, for their strengths, but sometimes they're not where they need to be. And it lies within the secret of the leadership gap. And the leadership gap is what I explain in the book, is there's 7 archetypes within us. And they all have virtues of which, if we live by them, we will excel. But sometimes those same leadership styles, those same leadership character and virtues have a gap, a polarity of character, a competing side. And if we're challenged and if we're stressed, those are the defaults that we lead by, and we don't even realize it. Once we realize it, we can choose, but most people don't even know they exist.
So let's start by taking us through the leadership archetypes. So these are really the power positions, in a way, if you will, or I'll let you define the leadership archetypes and what they are and how you came up with them.
So I came up with them because it didn't matter what country I was in or what language anybody spoke. These are the 7 archetypes that existed within every single person that I was working with. And the reason I knew that was because it kept coming up. It kept showing up. And it wasn't so much their greatness that was showing up. It was their gaps. So I had to find the polarity of character that would teach each individual how they could stand in their greatness. So I'll give you an example. First of all, it's called the rethink system. The reason it's called rethink, because most people think, they always do this thinking, right? I think I know, I think I have to know it. I think. I think great leadership starts with rethinking what you think you know and what you need to know and how much you need to know. So that's why I called it the rethink. Rethink is also an acronym for the R is the rebel, the E is the explorer, T is the truth teller, H is the hero, I is the inventor, N is the navigator, and K is the knight. Now, these sound great. They sound wonderful, but it's the virtues of what they're driven by that makes the difference. So there's confidence, intuition, candor, courage, integrity, trust, and loyalty. Now, you may be saying to yourself, oh, those are wonderful. I could do those. Not true, because I'll give you an example. Let's take the first one, the rebel. A rebel is someone who wants to make an impact on the world. They're very passionate about a cause. But what do they need in order to be the rebel? They need to have confidence. But most people think that confidence comes from mantras and affirmations of standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm the best, I am the greatest. That's not confidence.
That's self-help, Lolly.
Right. That's not going to give you the confidence. I always say, confidence is believing you're able, but competence is knowing you're able. Because I believe that your confidence comes from, and this is a math equation for every engineer listening, it's your capabilities plus your competencies equal your confidence. So if you know that you're able, you have these things, you've mastered your skill, you've done it many, many times, you have competencies, it will give you the confidence to do what you need to do. But in my research, I have found 99% of high achieving individuals suffer from the leadership gap, which is the imposter who has self-doubt. So instead of being the rebel who's confident, most of us, when given a new task, a new position, a new title, a new project, a new process, immediately default into the imposter who's plagued by self-doubt. And when that is true, it can cost us in our greatness. So this competing side of what I just talked about plays out over and over and over again in every individual that I've ever met.
So what is the cost of that backslide into the imposter? Because, on the one hand, it makes perfect sense. And we've heard people talk about, imposter syndrome as though it's an everyday thing that happens when you move into that next level. But should we look at it as an everyday thing? And what's the cost of the shadow? I believe you call it the shadow type.
Right. So interesting that you say that, because most books that are written talk about strengths and then they talk about weaknesses, right? And my book is different because this is what I learned from Jung. We are the sum of all our parts. We're not fragmented human beings. We have to own all of who we are, the good, the bad, the dark, the light, the shadow, the greatness, whatever it is within us. So my book talks about how to leverage the imposter within you, how to leverage your gaps in order to be a complete whole person, in order to be the best version of yourself. And this is not self-help. This is more psychology and philosophy. This is a mythology that really, really works, because if you have awareness that you have self-doubt and you have awareness, okay, the imposter syndrome is part of my everyday. Now, what do I need to do to leverage it to become more of who I want to be and could be?
So let's follow this thread through, because I love this notion of the imposter. Can you give me an example of how a person can leverage the imposter, the shadow type?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I always try to find out what's the driver, what gives fuel to the imposter. The imposter is fueled by many aspects, but one of the very important aspects is an imposter is always busy comparing themselves to others. The reason the imposter exists is because we're always looking over our shoulder. Look at her, look at him, Look what they're doing. Look what she's doing. I can't do that. I'm not doing that. When we have this kind of dialogue, the imposter becomes inflated. It becomes something that grows within us, and it sometimes overpowers us. So the first thing to do is stop comparing yourself to others. Easier said than done, but a game changer if it actually becomes a reality. And do you remember earlier in the call, we talked about disciplines? So I'm going to go back to discipline that I do every night. Part of my discipline, I know she's laughing at
I know that I can see it. I'm envious of the discipline. But I'm not comparing.
So I should use a different word, discipline, with you. So one of my rituals that I do in the evening is after gratitude, I always ask myself a question. And the question sounds like this: Lolly, what did you do today that was better than yesterday? And what will you do tomorrow that was better than today? This simple question that I started many, many years ago was because I was constantly looking over my shoulder and comparing myself to others. If we're busy looking outward, we're only going to succeed so much. But if we go inward, we can do anything. It's so expansive. If we're always comparing ourselves to ourselves and measuring with ourselves, what we measure grows. And so I'm not measuring myself against anyone else, only about myself. These are the kind of rituals, okay, not disciplines, rituals that I do in order to leverage the imposter within. So there are many of them. In the book, it talks about 6 or 7 of them that you could pick up immediately to leverage the imposter, the self-doubt. Another thing is very important is the distinction between perfection, being perfect, and being excellent. If we're striving for perfect, you're going to fail in life. I always say striving for perfect is striving to fail. But if we're going for excellence, being the best that we can do in that moment, that's success. And so the driver again for the imposter is to be perfect, to be driven. That doesn't work. That's inevitable that we are going to fail. So if we tweak how we see ourselves or what we want to emulate towards, that will be able to leverage the imposter within us. And there are many others in the book. And I definitely recommend that everybody pick up the book, but we don't have to make the imposter within us the enemy. We can own it to show up in our greatness.
All of us have all of these archetypes and the corresponding shadow types, correct?
Absolutely. Right. Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up, because people will say, okay, I'm just the rebel, but I'm not the knight. No. We are all of this because they're based on virtues. Hopefully, we all have these virtues of integrity and honesty within us that we need to embrace.
Now, which of the archetypes do you find that you relate to the most?
Interestingly enough, it's the navigator and the fixer. The navigator is someone who's very practical and very pragmatic, is able to take something that's very complicated and make it simple. But because someone has this trait, people really trust them. It's like the go-to kind of gal, the go-to kind of man. It's like, okay, I want to go to them because they always have great answers and great solutions. But the leadership gap to that is the fixer who's arrogant. So that you have a problem and you go to the navigator, but they're stressed, so they become the fixer and they say, do it this way. I've done it before. I've been in my business for over 30 years. I know exactly how to solve that problem. Just, do it my way. When you fix someone, they hate it. They're like, I don't want you to fix me. I just wanted you to listen to me. And so that thin line between navigator and fixer shows up constantly in my business, especially being a coach.
Right.
One of the things is very important to constantly remember: do not fix your clients' problems. Never fix your clients' problems, even if you know exactly what they need to do. Navigate them so they find the answer within them, exactly what you knew was the answer. You don't need to tell people how smart you are. You need to empower people, not disempower people. If you can lead them towards a certain way, they'll stay with you. Like my clients stay with me 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, almost 25 years. Why? Because I never make them feel that I'm going to give them the answer. They always feel empowered by being around me.
One of the things when you look at your body of work and the contribution that you've made to the field of leadership through, your own thought leadership, is this idea of having a voice, of having an impact, of creating a body of work that is out in the world that people have read, are talking about. It's not just creating the body of work, but building the platform. Now, there are women who are listening, and obviously a big focus of our show is elevating and lifting women's voices. What strategies or insight or advice might you share with women who are looking to contribute their ideas to the world with greater success and impact?
What a great question. And the answer might surprise you. So the answer for me is, again, it goes back to the imposter syndrome. Stop looking at what Lolly has done, what Eleanor has done. Go inward. Find out what is your sweet spot. What is your message? I always say who you are is the message to the world. Find out what your message to the world is and I'm not going to use the word disciplined, create rituals in your life that you're constantly showing up that way. How you speak, how you act, what you write, what you do, where you are is consistent and is authentic. The definition of integrity means the consistency of character. Have consistency of character wherever you are. Don't just write great articles about leadership or your business or your specialty. Live those principles. Be those principles. The biggest compliment I always get is, Lolly, you're exactly like what you write about. Then I know I am consistent of my character. So find out what your message to the world is, live it, breathe it, act upon it constantly. Don't worry if it's one article, two article, someone is reading it. You are impacting. Could it be one person, 10 people, 1,000 people, 1 million people? It doesn't matter because one person can change the world.
You know, we talked about your mentors, Carl Jung, Viktor Frankl, Joseph Campbell. What women inspire you and why?
It's interesting that this is going full circle, and we didn't rehearse this at all, but one of my favorite books is Katharine Graham. One of the things that a quote in her book, she's like, a little old housewife and look where I am today, right? What did she become? She was this, and this is her own words. I would never say this about another person, but, she in the very beginning felt very comfortable with her husband taking over the business. But one thing about Katharine Graham was when someone needed to step in, she stepped up. When someone needed to speak up, she spoke up. She created a new way of journalism. She became a powerhouse. She became someone that people respected, emulated, and paid attention to. But it wasn't something that she wore as a badge of honor. She did it in her own way. The message to the world was, I am who I am, and I will do the best of my ability. It all came from integrity. And so I think she's one of my favorite people.
One of my favorite stories about Katharine Graham came from the Senator Vernon Jordan, I believe his name is Vernon Jordan, a senator who talked about the parties, of course, that she had, she really carried on the tradition of her father. So in her house in Washington, usually on a weekly basis, she would have a cocktail hour where she would invite, different senators and congressmen and congresswomen from different sides of the floor over to have a drink together, to chat. And after Katharine Graham's death, those parties stopped, and Senator Jordan was making the link between the absence of those parties and the increase of partisanship, that she actually played a big role as a leader in bringing people together through the subtle expression of being, what she said, i.e. bringing people together for a simple cocktail. I love that story about Katharine Graham. She really is a remarkable woman. And that book, of course, is Personal History. And your book is The Leadership Gap. Incredible book. Lolly, where can people go to learn more about you?
You can find me at lollydaskal.com, and I write articles every single Tuesday on my personal blog. But I write an article a day on Inc. I write 100 articles a month on leadership. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. The thing is that if you're looking to find yourself, look inward. I think that's the biggest gift you can give yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Fierce Feminine Leadership. Be sure to head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. While you're there, leave us a fierce review. When you leave a review, your name is automatically entered into a monthly draw. Each month, we'll draw one reviewer to automatically receive a private coaching session with women's leadership expert Eleanor Beaton. So remember, head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Then leave us a review for your chance to win a private coaching session with Eleanor Beaton. Go to eleanorbeatonpodcast.com and sign up to get your free cheat sheet, The 5 Critical Leadership Skills of 7-Figure Businesswomen. This free download will help you diagnose the exact skills you need to see major growth in your business and career. Head over to eleanorbeatonpodcast.com and get your free download today.